Observe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of the Observe and Rapport show. I'm Kyle Brennan, joined as ever by my beautiful co-host, Keith Sullivan. Keith, how are we doing today?
I'm good. It's just awkward sometimes sitting in this chair, you know?
Well, it's a very uncomfortable-looking chair.
It's fine.
That's why I gave it to you.
I never know if I use the pillow on the back or my ass or whatever, so it's just kind of like I got to get ready again.
I'm always trying to fix my posture,
You
wherever
see?
I am.
Yeah.
I feel like my shoulder's always forward.
Yes.
I'm always trying to just remind myself.
You ever do that? You ever try to fix your posture and it's literally
You can't look normal when you do it.
you look like an asshole. You're like,
I feel like a freaking droid from Star Wars.
yeah. And then you fix it, right? And it goes right back to what, within 30 seconds, it's just,
Oh, yeah.
you fall apart.
It's
Even if you're
impossible.
consciously keeping it in your head, it still just goes to shit after a while.
I remember my roommate Joey in college. I'd literally walk into his room when he was studying, and he'd be perfectly on the edge of his seat, just typing or head in a book. I'm like, how do you just maintain posture? And he had a 6-pack. I was like, is it just because he just stands upright? His whole life?
I think it's just because if maybe the stand-up desk maybe
I
helps
use a
with
stand-up
people.
desk, but I
Do you?
still slump.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't know why. And I also noticed though it does help with everything. I've started running recently again. I'm training for something, but just while you're running, even just getting that oh, let me get my shoulders. You know,
Yeah.
it's I give a shit a little bit. It gives you some extra,
So
know.
I hang a pull-up bar outside of my bathroom. So
Yeah.
anytime I go to the bathroom, I'll either hang or just do a couple pull-ups.
Right.
And that instantly just
Yes.
perks you up a little bit too.
I have a weird thing. I notice when I run, I just feel like my spine compresses every step you take over time. So hanging, I set up a pipe at work in the ceiling and I just hang, and you feel like an accordion, your spine just yes, yeah,
It just unwinds.
There's a little toy that goes. It's like that
the,
exactly.
the dog from Toy Story.
Yeah,
the
Slink.
Slinky dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The first time I actually noticed where posture makes a huge difference was first time I actually lost a significant amount of weight was I lost 30 pounds when I was 17, and instantly I noticed oh shit, this 30 pounds was actually making a huge impact on my posture, and I would actually be slumping, and then when I lost the weight I was able to stand upright for the first time. So that was pretty wild to realize how much just the weight that's on your front part sags your shoulders and stuff. So that was interesting.
When I was 21, I noticed I was 240 back then, and maybe
Damn.
even a little more. Yeah, I was.
Wow.
I was 245 even. And dude, I don't know what happened, but when I was 21, I looked like I was 48, and I was I looked like a guy with 3 kids. And then I don't know what happened. I just got older and shit. But now I look my age-ish. But yeah, having extra, you don't even realize how fat you are when you're fat sometimes, is my point. And it does fuck with everything. That's probably why I still have the forward-leaning issue and the shoulders are straight. It's hard to keep it all
I feel
together.
you can be in good shape and still just have bad posture. I don't know.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to work on their posture.
Yeah, I'm trying to work on a lot of things, man. But Goggins looks good when he runs. He's got fucking everything's just right. He doesn't fall apart, that guy.
There's some people who are just built like mannequins. They just they a t-shirt never fits them awkwardly.
Yeah.
I feel sometimes I realize if I try on a t-shirt, it looks good in the store, and then I get home and I'm like, what the I look terrible in this. What am I doing? I always, me and my brother always talk about this. Guys who can pull off the collared shirt with a sweater over it.
Yeah.
Fuck those guys.
I don't know.
How do they pull that off?
That's like a Ryan Reynolds body.
That's the most
You gotta
uncomfortable.
be-
I'm always fucking pulling my sweater down.
Yeah.
But guys who can just have the body that just mannequin, it just stays put.
Yeah, you try it on and you're like, dude, how is this the same thing? It looks like a joke on me. I've tried that. I think on Easter one year I wore a chaps over a collared
Chaps,
shirt.
That's a good Christmas company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And it looked terrible. But it's more about what you're doing. I won the ugly sweater contest that year when I was I had an ugly sweater contest that I went to, and
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't know. It's a little paradoxical. I won for being the worst. It's a little. I mean, there were literally jingle bells and like tinsel hanging off the fucking thing. It was like a joke, you know. Speaking of paradoxes, we got to get into this book we both read called The Immortality Key.
Yep.
I say paradox because if you guys haven't read The Immortality Key,
by Brian Muraresku.
Yeah, I didn't know how to say his last name. I was going to ask you.
Yeah, we heard about it. I assume you heard about it the same way I did. Joe Rogan talks about like a handful of books all the time. He talks about like Chaos by Tom O'Neill.
Yeah, Sapiens,
and Immortality Key was one that he always brings up. And one of my friends, Gina, actually, she bought it and started listening to it, and she was like, "Oh, Kyle, I assume you've read this, right?" And I'm like, "Shit, no, I actually haven't." And she was like, "It's amazing. You got
Gina? Like the Gina I know?
Yeah, Gina.
Okay. Shout out Gina.
Yeah, and so I was like, all right, I got to read it now, so we can talk about it. And then I had no idea until we started talking about recording this episode that you're also reading it.
Yeah. It's pretty funny that worked out. But I say paradox because when you read a book like this book in a nutshell is about the idea that the original Christian religion and the traditions and the ceremonies, all of that was influenced by some kind of a psychedelic experience. Is basically what this guy's argument is that the idea of religion in general, the genesis of it was from some kind of a psychedelic trip, let's call it. But I say paradox because these books, these kinds of discussions always remind me that our mind reveals itself to itself. And that's a weird thought, right? Like your brain, your mind asks the question and also gives you the answer, right? Like it's a weird kind of relationship between your mind and reality where it can't exist without the other, both of them. Like you're only experiencing anything because of it. You know what I mean? And it reminds me of that quote, and I know that you know it, and I know, but it's important nonetheless, that if our minds were so simple that we could understand them, we would be so simple that we wouldn't be able to, right? So there's this never-ending chase between who we are and our ponderings and what the answer is, and we'll never quite figure everything out.
I'm a big fan in general of books like these and guys who are doing similar work like this, like Graham Hancock, where it's some people may argue it's conspiracy or revisionist history, but in my opinion, it's just like, well, why should we believe the things that we've just inherently been told about religion, about societal structures, about language, about the formation of societies and, the governance of it. And I really appreciate, while you don't have to believe the theory inherently or wholesale, it is an interesting exploration to be like, well, why was there kind of this explosion in religion and this belief in God kind of from that area of the globe, right? It was like, kind of around the Mediterranean Sea, right? It was Greece, Turkey, that whole the Fertile Crescent kind of area, and the argument that Brian Muraresku kind of posits is that Christianity from the Romans started in about 350 AD or after death. I don't even know if that's what it stands for.
I think that's what it is. After
told.
Death, yeah.
Prior to that, from about 35 or about 1500. BC to 350 AD, there was essentially this secret Greek mystery religion that in Eleusis, which is about 13 miles northwest of Athens. And there are stories, and some are kind of like religious type fables, and some are actual stories from philosophers like Socrates and Plato of traveling from Athens to Eleusis to take part in this sacred ritual. And the theory that Brian Muraresku has through tons and tons of research, it's a 500 plus page book, is that at these ceremonies, the Greeks would ingest a wine mixture. And what the Greeks used to do is actually they would mix the wine with fruit to ferment it. So it wasn't just wine as we know it now. It was more wine mixed with a bunch of herbs and fruits and other things that would ferment. And the theory is that fungus would grow within this wine, and that he he doesn't quite know if it's something that that was intentional or something that was by accident. But a fungus grows called ergot, which actually has the same effects when ingested as LSD.
Right.
And his theory is that this religion basically formed because when you ingest kind of psychedelic or hallucinogenics like that, you experience a realm that, unless you have kind of partaken in those experiences, that you don't quite understand. But it is as close to a religious or spiritual experience of either feeling God's presence, as cheesy as that sounds, or feeling the presence of death in some way, and not in a scary way, but more of in a welcoming acceptance of there are things out there larger than myself, and I am a part of a large organism, essentially.
Yeah.
And that theory is that the religion, people would basically go and have these experiences, and the religion was based on that. And that when the Romans came in 350, they were basically like, what the fuck is this? We need to get rid of this sacred tradition. And they kind of refabricated that religion into what Christianity is today, which is a lot about restriction and obviously not all about restriction, but some of the stories were very similar.
Yeah.
It's just wild. Like,
it's a wild book. And like, that's why I brought up the mind before, because a lot of the research that this guy that Brian talks about in the book, Muraresku, is that how you say it?
Brian Muraresku.
Muraresku.
Feels like you're stuttering.
Yeah. So a lot of people, to this day, when they take psilocybin, when they take LSD, they report a lot of the same experiences when they come down from their trip. A very common vision is a snake head, for example, with the eyes and, looking in at you and looking through you, and it's not necessarily like intimidating as much as it is welcoming. And a lot of people talk about these spirits, these beings on the other end of the realm that are more real than reality. They say it's more real than not being high. Like it's more real. They say it's ineffably real. Like it's, for a fact, this isn't like, oh, I'm just tripping, I'm just, hallucinating. This is actually happening to me. Right. And like, Aldous Huxley wrote The Doors of Perception. And that's why I brought up the mind, because the mind is this, it's almost like the fourth dimension. Like, some people have issues with, like, what's the fourth dimension? Like, think of it this way. Like, there's, in our world or our realm of experience, there's up, down, left, and right. Like, but in your mind, there's the future. There's the past as well. There's the potential future. There's the, a reconstruction of the past. So there's like time as well in there. And because of that, some people believe that these psychedelic experiences can help you tap into these archetypal ancient experiences that every human being with a DNA strand has ever had. And that's why we all seem to kind of report the same thing.
That to me is one of the more interesting things, is the fact that people report seeing the same visions.
Right.
Look, if you've never done these things, or you are religious yourself and have skirmished some of these hallucinogenics or drugs as bad, or you're going down the wrong path, I get it. But at the same time, there is significant research, literature, and like academic study from Johns Hopkins, NYU, top researchers going into obviously the positive benefits of MDMA or ecstasy, psilocybin mushrooms, LSD, on the effects of depression, PTSD, anxiety, addiction, because it's really such a profound, like you said, ineffable experience that words, like, we can try to talk about it ad nauseum on this podcast, but unless you've experienced it, you don't quite understand that realm. And it's why, the image that you see is people, who wear freaking like wooden beads and like, long scarves and stuff. And they talk about like, let's banish society, man. And like, there is that degree, but obviously people who take it just get this appreciation for the fact that like we are so insignificant, but also at the same time a part of something, like I said, larger than ourselves, where you don't fear death anymore, because you actually realize, again, this sounds super, super freaking hippy dippy, but you're never really alive or dead. You're a
Yes.
part. You're a part of a large organism.
Yes.
And whether you're alive or you're dead, you're still part of that organism.
Right.
And one thing that Brian Muraresku talks about, actually, which is interesting, was that women were actually the ones who were the leaders.
It was matriarchal, yeah.
It was matriarchal because the snake visions that you talked about were, people reported kind of the vision of like Mother Earth. Kind of it was not a scary snake. It was a kind of tender, motherly, godlike figure that people see in these visions. And
the snake is a very popular symbol in Christianity to this day. There's a lot of snake, the snake in the garden. There's like a whole cathedral, I believe, that's built in the shape of a snake, or in some country, I forget what it is, but from the bird's eye view from the top, it looks like the silhouette of a snake, and even on the inside, there's like two eyes, and like it's the serpent, right? It's like that idea.
And in Eleusis, the city in Greece where these things took place, Marcus Aurelius, who we love on this podcast,
he's your guy.
He's my guy. There's actually a statue built of him at Eleusis. I guess he was, when the Romans came in, he was one of the ones that was like, this is kind of interesting, actually.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
They built a statue for him. Not surprising, as we know his views. But there was a statue of him with a serpent in his chest. And
is it on a big, tall pillar?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen pictures
And when the
of that.
Romans came in and I guess banished this secret religion in favor of Catholicism, they carved out the snake in favor of a cross. And it's still there to this day.
Oh, yeah.
So that's like one of those examples of like, I think the Christians came in and they got rid of the matriarchal system and basically banished women from religion. They got rid of this sacred, hallucinogenic brew of sorts, but wine is still a part of the religious culture. So it's interesting that when you try to tell someone this today, like a grandma or a mother or something, right? Like, it sounds obviously so ridiculous, but in my opinion, if you've experienced psychedelics in those ways, like, that's almost more religious than someone trying to teach religion.
Right.
And like, you just get it just like through rote memorization and through education and through reading, which, yes, that can have an impact, but once you experience it and you actually feel that presence.
And then he goes into, some of the things that were said, like Albert Einstein has a very beautiful quote about nature. And it's so interesting. It's not like it's a big, profound quote, but it's because he said it and he was so insightful and imaginative. He said, if you walk through nature and you look around and you really, really pay attention, you will see something deeply hidden in it. And this is the guy who thought of the fabric of space-time, right? Like, people believe that he could see things other people couldn't. And in the book, he talks about how in the Gospel of Thomas, he says, recognize what's in front of you, and what is hidden will be revealed. And it's like, you can imagine in a world where you're taking an ergot-infused wine, and, if you've ever experienced a psychedelic trip, like, it's almost like reality starts to melt away and you see this other thing that's here. And it's not like we have all the senses to see and pick up on everything. We can't see ultraviolet light. We can't see, infrared. We can't see radio waves. Like, there's
X-rays,
things that we
gamma
can't
rays,
perceive, and like, so, and that's why I go back to the mind a lot too, because, like you talked about, if you're alive and dead, it doesn't really matter. You're still part of this collective consciousness, this collective, organism. And I believe that, like, our capabilities for intellectual, hypothetical contemplation is operationally reliant on a system that has infinite bandwidth. Like, our brains it's like they go into the past as well. Like, past experiences, genetic experiences, it's all in your DNA, and you're inheriting that. So the brain's like, it's almost like it's a receiver. And consciousness is this broadcast, and you get to, if you have a brain, you get to take part in it.
And I feel like, of the experiences I've had, and I've only really had positive experiences, and the reason is because I feel like it gives me the ability to explore either a sense is not the right word, but it allows me to basically explore a layer that I had never previously seen before.
Right.
So it allows me to be curious and be like, is that always there? Or is that just hidden under our levels of perception sober? And once you ingest these things, which are natural in some ways, it allows a new layer of perception and awareness that isn't otherwise tangible. Yeah,
I agree. And that's kind of what this book made me really think about that. Like, I just imagined like all these people like tripping like back in the day, but like it wasn't like for the idea of like you said, the hippie with the long hair and the tie-dye t-shirt. It was like it was like a very serious thing.
Yeah, I don't think they were just like partying in a big hall.
I think it was like, guys, we found a way to tap into the God realm, like where the spirits are, right, and where, you know, the archetypes are, and, you know, and we can really maybe even have a discussion with them. And you can imagine how that could become a religion. So this idea isn't insane to me, you know? I mean, it makes, like you said, it's not that it makes more sense, because a part of me believes that religion is also, or could have just been, you know, like a generational documentation of the best way to behave so that your life goes the best way that it can, right? Like a lot of the morals and values are just being a basic human being, right, as far as you and I are concerned. But back in the day, that wasn't necessarily obvious, right? Like, don't steal, don't kill anybody. Also, the moral lessons and the stories themselves. And before Netflix, you know, stories were really entertaining and they mattered a lot to people, right? So there's a part of me that doesn't necessarily believe that this is exactly 100% true, but it makes sense, right?
What is definitely probably 100% true is that beer was biochemically like the first experiment of humans basically
concocting something,
concocting a, you know, or with a biochemical product of ingestion. Mm-hmm. So, according to like the chromatography that they're able to do on these pots and clays that they're able to find in, you know, excavations, beer is actually older than bread.
Really?
So if you think about it, like beer, it doesn't need to be at a specific temperature. It's literally just like barley and water and just time. Mm-hmm. So they think beer has always been integrated in society, and beer also has the ability to grow this fungus in it that can produce hallucinogenic effects. And we know wine was always involved in these societies. So whether it was hallucinogenic beer or hallucinogenic wine, that's obviously up for debate. But the fact is, societies as far back as, you know, 6,000 years ago were ingesting, you know, kind of intoxicants of some sort.
Yeah.
And that was involved in either culturally, religiously, ceremonially, for death, for celebration. And there's an argument that there were pharmacologists, essentially people who were experts in medicinal plants, and they knew how to use them properly for healing, how to use them properly for kind of death as someone is slowly dying, how to use them for celebration, and also how to use them for kind of spiritual, religious experiences.
I liked when he tied in the idea of the Salem witch trials, like because like even just as recently as a few hundred years ago, there were women, like in the matriarchal, you know, discussion we were having, concocting these weird kind of potions, they called them. But like he did mention, like maybe that's just like witches, like a witch hunt, like that could have just been, you know, some kind of like resurgence of this kind of a religion, like this resurgence of like, drink this potion, have this experience, you know, this is what you're going to find, this is what you'll see. And it becomes like a religious experience. And the Catholic Church, you know, just killed all of these women. They were, for whatever reason, very threatened by the idea of this kind of a religious practice, like with like a woman mediator and a psychedelic experience. And like,
why is it that you think it seems like there's a cyclical pattern so often, if you read far enough back in history, of societies experiencing sort of these psychedelic, potentially revolutions, and then another portion of the society, or the majority, striking down on it, right? We saw it as recently as the 60s with, you know, the LSD and the psychedelic movement then. Now you're starting to see a resurgence, right? In this day and age. And a lot of it's more coming from a sort of academic field, right? It's being done in trials for, again, PTSD and depression in these universities. Seems like society is starting to get more open to, you know, cannabis being legalized and psilocybin being legalized in certain places. But why do you think it is that some subset or some majority or large authority strikes down over and over again.
Yeah, I think it's because, now, I mean, you have to imagine, like, so many things matter in that question. Like, back in those days, not everyone knew how to read, right? Priests knew how to read. Kings knew how to read. People who knew how to read were in serious control. Like, they really did run the show, right? And if everyone's going around having these psychedelic experiences and awakenings and, realizations and epiphanies, these, like, realer than life epiphanies with their experience with the other realms and all that stuff, you have to imagine that, other things like work and, being a good citizen and all that stuff just kind of goes out the window. And I think they're just fearful of a mass, like a realization or something. It's almost like they're trying to keep it from everybody,
Yeah.
It's the same way. It's always been like the elites kind of know what the truth is and they're trying to keep everybody at bay. It's always been that way, right? I mean, I don't know why though. Like, what's the big deal about, I guess there was just such a taboo attached to just tripping. Like, it got this really bad name attached to it. Like, you're just tripping balls and it's completely nonsensical. And yeah, you can have a bad experience, but since when are bad experiences always and only bad? Like, sometimes something bad can happen to you in reality and, like, it just actually makes you a better person, right?
Yeah, I've always been interested in why, like, alcohol, obviously there was the prohibition and certain religions ban alcohol, but, like, alcohol seemed to be pervade globally.
There's commercials.
So widely accepted. And I know this is like a common trope everyone talks about, like, why are alcohol and cigarettes allowed
on every
like,
street corner?
The thing that grows naturally, man, isn't.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's true. Like, why? How come alcohol has and cigarettes and maybe things that have just been around longer or just been consumed by a wider population of people, whereas maybe these psychedelics and cannabis were kind of shunned and kind of left in secrecy.
Sure.
And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's the fact that alcohol is more widely.
I was gonna say it's got to be
adopted. That it's
more generally
you can have
enjoyable.
you can have it in lower doses and still have a fun time. Whereas, like, maybe some of these other ones.
He did mention as well that, like, the ergot and all that stuff, like, it's actually very hard to make it correctly. Like, even just as recently, Albert Hoffman was the first scientist to, separate whatever, chemical bonds make up ergot from the other stuff that makes it so nauseating and poisonous and put it in what we now know as LSD, right? But or make LSD, but it's a more complicated process than fermentation. Like, that's another reason why beer is one of the oldest drinks, because it's actually a very safe alternative as well because of the fermentation process. A lot of bacteria gets killed off. You have to basically cook the drink. Mm-hmm. Hot drinks like that, coffee, it all led to, like, the revolutions in a lot of places, the scientific revolutions, the intellectual revolutions, like, just because people weren't dying from contaminated drinks anymore.
Right. Yeah,
like beer, wine,
tea,
coffee.
Yeah, I don't know if we've talked about this, but there's an interesting, like, correlation between the introduction of alcohol, coffee, and tea into society
with all the Enlightenment.
The Enlightenment.
Exactly. And also, but, like, cigarettes and alcohol, get to back the original point with why is it so widely available. I just found out that, like, Domino Sugar, for example, is from Puerto Rico. That company, like, and sugar is another one of those things that everyone likes, right? You taste it once, you go, this is great. And, to this day, Domino Sugar is like, it's the sugar. There's no other brand of sugar besides the store brand, right? But Puerto Rico was basically acquired by the United States for that purpose, like, for money. It just all comes down to sugarcane farms and creating a corporation and, like, wiping out the Puerto Rican culture and their traditions and getting rid of all of their schools and only teaching them how to speak English. We basically, to this day, we even call it an unincorporated territory. It's not a colony. It's not a state. It's just something that we did to make a lot of money. But the point is, it's sugar. Right. And so is alcohol, by the way. And when you break it all down, it just comes down to sugar. And, like, I think that it's just that these things are super addictive. And there's also, a potential for addiction. And I'm not trying to make it sound like it's just a capitalist evil plan, but isn't it? I mean, alcohol is addictive. It's destructive. It's everyone can enjoy it. Cigarettes, same thing. Sugar, same thing. It's like we why not push these things? It drives revenue. It drives profit. But if you're selling, you're gonna meet the ever-present, omnipresent, ancient God of the universe. It's like I don't think anybody's not everyone's interested in doing that. Some people are like, I'd rather not.
That's what I mean. I think it's like a very small subset that wants to even explore that.
Because honestly, I mean, I think like that's what I'm saying about like at a certain point,
it's a harder sell to say you're gonna see serpents flying in the sky,
right?
Then you're gonna have a fun time.
I think that the psychedelic experience, the way it's being treated today, is actually very mature. And it's being used to its utmost, efficiency in that a lot of people who are terminally ill, a lot of people who have suffered PTSD, we talked about, they're being administered these doses in a controlled environment, and it's helping them with their problem. But I don't think that the world would necessarily 1,000%, 100% positive, no negatives benefit if everyone experienced the other realm of, reality, I guess, because it's weird to call that realm the reality that we're in, like whatever. But like, I just mean like maybe that the thought back in the day was, let's pump the brakes on this movement because we have to like figure out how everyone's going to eat, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know if it would be like, I feel like the message in the book is like, man, if this just kind of kept going, everything would have been fine. Right. But like, isn't everything kind of fine?
Well, I think the message of the book was almost a what if
just a what if,
a what if like instead of the body and blood or like the wine and the wafer that you have, or instead of communion, or instead of what's the one that you get in like 8th grade, confirmation, what if almost like a bar mitzvah, like when you get to that certain age, it's like, okay, now is your time to experience kind of the God realm.
Sure.
Where you sort of have to reach a certain level of maturity.
Because we were just talking about how, we all kind of feel like we're a similar age. You're kind of stuck in a rut with your career a little bit. You're kind of looking for a change. Like, what am I really doing with my life? That kind of thing. And, I feel like psychedelic experiences kind of help rejuvenate that creativity in you, or that, drive to go forward, and you maybe it's like the brilliant guy Michael Pollan who wrote How to Change Your Mind. He said it's like a fresh. Imagine your thoughts are a snowy hill,
ski tracks,
and your thoughts are the sleds, and psychedelics are a fresh snowfall.
Right.
So all those original things, patterns that you would originally fall into, not necessarily anymore.
Which is so weird that I agree with that image. But it's hard to pinpoint what in the process of a psychedelic experience actually does that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Like, it's not like you see the snake or the elephant and like
it tells you like, stop doing those destructive, like nothing. Right. It's more just like, I don't know. You just have these sort of like epiphanies, for lack of a better term. But again, I always hate trying to describe it in words because it just doesn't do it justice in any way.
I agree with you.
It's more so just like you see visions for 3 to 5 hours of some sort, and you come out of it with just a rejuvenated sense of your being. I don't know. I even hate myself saying it.
I think what it comes from is the ego death, they call it, right?
Yeah.
When you realize that you aren't actually a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you're kind of experiencing everything.
Yeah.
You is such a weird word. That's why it's hard to explain, because that's what I talked about with the mind again. Like this, it's such a hard thing to discuss because it's a paradox in a way. It
allows you to experience life without your ego.
Yeah.
So like you don't feel any sense of identity with yourself, your body, your brain. You're kind of just, there's no input, and there's no hardware, no software backing you for a few hours. And it's like that, like, oh my God, I just got a glimpse into, like inner peace, essentially.
Sure.
And that's why some people feel like it's like God's presence, or like this stillness that just illuminates a lot of perceptive realities that you easily could otherwise, almost like some people can experience this without the ingestion of hallucinogenics. Some people can experience it through deep meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Some people can experience it through breath work, holotropic breathing. Like, it doesn't have to come from outside substances. It can come from yourself. It just requires a extreme focus, or actually the opposite. It's almost an extreme lack of focus. It's an extreme.
Do you see what
focus
I'm
on
getting with
nothing.
the paradox here, though?
Yeah.
It's not like you need focus. It's almost like you need a lack of focus, but you still need to focus.
Yeah.
But you also need to like let it go. It's this weird fight we're constantly in. It's like I kind of hate this thing in my head. Mm-hmm. It's almost like I'm fighting with it all the time. Like, no matter what you figure out, there's something else to figure out afterwards, because it's like, well, now what? And now what? And now what? Yeah. And like, it's just this weird, tug of war with yourself in that way. Like, it's like, I know Freud talked about this. Like, you have you, which is like your ego, and I think I'm saying that correctly. But then there's the persona, and then there's the shadow. And like, there's like three people in you, really. There's who you really are deep down, your experiences, your traumas, your traumas, all that stuff. Then there's the person that you are in front of everybody else.
Well, it's interesting. Like, we talk about like psychedelics and everything, but you can experience some of these same effects through breathing exercises, through meditation, like holotropic breathing. Like, I know
totally,
like Wim Hof breathing, which is like
Wim Hof is the man.
I do.
Yeah, I mean, I do the I've done the just breathing really hard for 30 breaths in and out, but you have to breathe in like all the fucking way and all the way out, and it's actually really hard to do that. And like, it's actually very uncomfortable.
Every morning I try to do it. I hate doing it.
It's very uncomfortable. And then it's one of those things, like, it's like a big rush. And then like after the 30th inhale, you hold it and you look around and you go, holy shit. It's a weird harmony that you're in with your body and the world, and like what you're looking at. You
don't have a worry in the world.
No, you can't think about anything.
All you're doing is focusing on holding your breath and like
right. And that's the best part is like, and you're the first time you do it, you're going to be surprised how easy it is, and like we talked about paradoxes, like Wim Hof says, there's a paradox right there in that you're not breathing, but you're tranquil. You're not panicking. You should be panicking, but you're literally not breathing. And it's been 45 seconds in some cases, and you still aren't begging for air. And obviously it's because you depleted all of your CO and got all the O2 back in and whatever. But besides that, there's this undeniable, like I said, harmony, tranquility you feel within your own body, within your own mindset. Like, it's almost like you're out of body now, and you're kind of experiencing the world not through the usual lens and perspective that you usually see it through, which is like the lens of like work, what I'm doing later, what I did yesterday, what I got coming up this weekend. All that shit goes away. Yeah.
I guess that's what meditation does in some respect, when you get into like a deep state like that.
Yeah.
And if you're not familiar, like we may have talked about him on a previous podcast, but Wim Hof, he's called the Iceman. He basically does all these feats of, like bathing in ice water and, scaling Mount Everest in like shorts and no shoes and stuff. Like, he does all these incredible feats, but he's developed essentially this breathing exercise that allows your central nervous system to regulate. I'm probably fucking up the science, but basically it's this breathing system. And if you're interested, you can just YouTube. He has an app too, but like Wim Hof 10-minute breathing intro. It's basically 30 as deep as you can go breaths in, and deep breaths out, 30 in a row, and then you hold your breath. The first round, you do 3 rounds. First round, you can probably hold your breath for like 30 seconds. Second round, you do 30 more deep breaths. All of a sudden, you can hold your breath for like 60 seconds. By the third round, you do it, you can hold your breath for like 90, almost 2 minutes plus. And like, you're just totally calm.
Yeah.
And you let out that last breath at the end of it, and you just look around and you're like,
no, I've literally held my breath for over 2 minutes. And I'm still like not begging for air. And it's a crazy, and like, time dilation happens there as well. Like,
do you count
while I'm not breathing?
Yeah.
No.
'Cause sometimes I do.
Well, I keep a timer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I have a timer going, and
you don't look
like
at
on that 30th, I go like this. I just hit the start button. Like, I let myself dive back into reality just for 1 second,
Sometimes I'll do it without the app, just to like, I'll either count myself,
Yeah.
or I'll just try purposely not to count.
Sure.
And see how, like, the time dilation where you're like, has this been 2 minutes or is this 10 seconds? I can't tell.
We've been talking about psychedelics a lot. Let's talk about something else. But
I'm reading.
yeah,
We can talk about another book I'm reading.
sure.
I'm only a few like pages in, but it's called How to Talk to Anyone.
Oh,
It's like 92 ways to.
I don't think I need to read that.
You don't need to read that. I probably don't either, honestly. But I thought it was pretty interesting. It's like
but what's it about?
92 different like ways of being very charismatic and talk to people, and like because
Must be so hard for people to do that.
It's interesting, right? Like, I think it's all relative, right? Like, compared to you, I'm not as outgoing. You're extremely outgoing. Compared to maybe the average person, I'm very outgoing. In my own estimation, I'm not very outgoing. I tend to find myself in certain social situations not wanting to talk, not out of uncomfortability, but sometimes just like, I'm comfortable just being silent and observing, hence observe and rapport.
See?
Did a lot of observing as a kid, which is why I prefer to sit back and watch people before I dive in. I like to kind of digest everyone's body language, and so I'm good with that. But talking necessarily, sometimes I just don't feel the need to do it. So this book has 92 strategies, which is a lot, but some of them are pretty interesting. Like, they sound like stupid hacks, but like one, we can role play. I'll give you an example.
Sure. Love it.
So we'll pretend like I've never met you before, and like, let's say our wives are friends, and I'm like,
Okay.
me and you were grabbing a beer, a barbecue, and I'm just like, hey, what's up, man?
Yeah. Well. Oh, we're doing it right now.
Yeah. We can role play.
Well, me? You want me to just be me?
Yeah, be you, and I'll use some of my strategies.
All right. Jesus, I'd be like, hey, pal. Well, this is awkward, huh?
Yeah, it's awkward, but I mean, hey, like, what did you do this weekend?
Well, I went and I actually had the first weekend where I didn't have anything to do. That was quite nice.
You didn't have anything?
Nothing. I mean, it was for me, it was wonderful because I'm always so busy, and I just really enjoy, for the first time in my whole summer, basically, just being able to sit on the goddamn couch and just watch some TV with the wife, crack a bottle of wine, have a nice Saturday. It was fantastic.
A nice Saturday. That's great. So you're busy all the time.
Usually I'm busy. I'm always going. See, yeah, I already see what you're doing.
Right? Yeah.
You're making me talk.
Yep.
You're making me talk.
And you know what it is? It's not even that.
But I'm not uncomfortable.
And
I'm not like, oh, I gotta talk.
This strategy to me, it, like, I hate calling it a strategy, but it works so well because this happened to me this past weekend. I ran into literally my wife ran into a friend and her boy, very nice guy, so it wasn't too awkward, but like, it got to a point where we were talking for like 20 minutes. And I'm like, all right, I kind of ran out of topics to talk about.
Yeah.
But this strategy is basically you just repeat two words back in a question. So you said, normally I'm very busy. And I go, you're very busy?
Right. And then I felt the need to go on and explain that.
And then I forget what else you said. But then you just repeat back. If you're just like, I played some golf. Oh, you played some golf?
Yeah.
Because then it forces you to expand on it.
It does.
And also,
you know what? And I can imagine for an introverted person, that's gold. That's a golden nugget for
minimal effort.
Yeah. That's gold.
Yeah.
Because honestly, you said that you don't like, I feel like I would benefit from this book too, because honestly, a lot of my outgoing behavior is uncomfortability. And it's not like I hate that it's quiet. It's just, let's fill the room up. Let's get this thing going. And I'm just not, I'm shameless. Like, I'll just do it and embarrass myself.
See, that's interesting though, that's because mine is more so, I walk into a room and I'm like, let me feel this out.
Right.
So I kind of just like almost like a bass player in a jazz band. I'm just like, all right, let me just hold until we get the groove a little bit, and then I'll join in and start playing the melody.
That's probably the normal way to be honest. I mean, I show up and do a backflip. It's like, Jesus, look at this guy. Yeah, it works. But that's just one strategy. Can you just expand a little on the 92?
Honestly, I'm so...
Well, you just started,
right? Started it. The other ones are so obvious. It's just like, freaking smile born. Like,
right.
Well, when you walk into a door frame or walk into a new room, basically use the door frame as a reminder to, like, back to your posture, fix your posture, and like smile. Okay. Because as soon as you walk into a room and you're smiling, and let's say you just make eye contact with someone, they immediately think that's a nice person. Let me go. I want to talk to them.
Yeah.
The other one was just what else was there? eye contact, obviously, like have sticky eyes, you know, like you always keep the spotlight on the other person.
Yeah.
Ask them questions.
Ask questions is
Some of them are
huge.
pretty obvious. So I'm
No, but that's
I'm
not
kind of
so obvious
I'm
to
skimming
people.
I'm skimming through it past the obvious ones, you know, of just like match the body language of the other person, and looking to see more of ones that like, oh, I've never heard that one. That's interesting.
Yeah. I know that like some people it's not so obvious though. Like some people for whatever reason, like I wanted to ask you about this too. Like what do you feel about, because like, you know, we just talked about the way I am and the way that you are, and we didn't necessarily, I mean, you'll never know the exponential meaning of things, that something so small can mean something, you know, that it can have a catastrophic effect on your life, something tiny. But like my point is our upbringings were basically the same, you know, similar geographically, our parents, whatever. And like we're very different, right? And my sisters, you and your brother, like you're all different from each other, even though you grew up in the same household, right? Do you think that we are who we are at the end of the day from birth, and our experiences only have so much to do with who we become? Or do you feel that you're entirely shaped by your experiences?
I think this ties back into almost how we started the podcast about like the paradox of the consciousness, because you can very easily fall into your whatever it is your autopilot or default mode is.
Right. So there is an autopilot.
I think
there is too.
I think, and I don't have kids, but maybe you can speak to it, or maybe your daughter's not quite old enough yet. But I've heard other people basically say like your kids kind of come out of the box a certain way, and there's really nothing you could have done to change that. Like one kid, even though you treat them so calmly, can just be wild and just boundless energy. And another kid could just be, you know, the chillest kid on earth, even though he lives in a frantic life. So, and sometimes they just have hobbies and interests, and you're just like, neither the mom or the dad have those, and you have no idea. I think, yes, you know, there's obviously the nature versus nurture argument, but I think as you get older too, you start to realize you can also just you can decide to change whenever you want. You know what I mean? And I think that's what's interesting.
Yeah.
Is you can trick your mind and your subconscious into, like, let's say if you're a really shy person, and you've always told yourself, I'm really shy, you know, everyone, you introduce yourself as that, hey, yeah, sorry, I'm really shy. And, I shun away, right? One day you can literally just decide, I'm going to be the most outgoing person I know, and just pretend to be outgoing and do these tactics and stuff. And literally in 6 months, you can just become an outgoing person just from telling yourself almost a lie.
It's true.
And believing it. So that's what I've always found interesting, and why I've always been curious about exploring a lot of these books and ideas and these psychedelic ideas, because I think the subconscious is so complex, but also so easily manipulable. Yeah. Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, has this line that your brain is a moist computer that you can program. So it's a computer in that it's very complicated, but it's moist in that it's adaptable. Right. You can alter it and change it as long as you know kind of the tricks and how to trick it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. I think that like you said, like when I was younger, I wasn't always like this, you know, like I was a little more crazy. I didn't really speak as well as I speak now, but I just kind of decided one day, like, I'm just going to stop being that way and just, you know, read a little more and, you know, conduct myself a certain way and talk a certain way and get more articulate. And I've always been obsessed with rappers and like George Carlin and people who can speak quickly and cleverly and put things together in a way that's concise and articulate. And one day I remember like just being like, I'm going to try as hard as I can to be that way. But I wasn't like that. I was literally shy when I was a kid, you know? And then I just was like, yo, this is boring. I'm going to stop being this way. You know, and then I did. And then I just never went back. You know, I just changed. So yeah, like it's a little bit of both, right? Like you are who you are, but you're also what you're told, whether it's you or somebody else.
That's a big one.
You're also what you're told.
I think, like I think you're told a lot, and that reinforces certain behavior. I actually just watched. I was just watching the Swamp Kings, the documentary about the University of Florida football team with Tim Tebow.
Oh, cool.
And he was saying how when he was coming out of high school, he was touted as like this God's gift, like he is the best football player on the planet, like he's going to come to Florida and save the program. And he talked about when he was a kid, he wasn't supposed to survive. Like when he was in his mother's womb, she had all these complications, and he was the youngest of like 5 or 6 children. And when he came out, like his whole life, his parents were like, "You're a miracle baby. You were destined to do great things." And there's a quote that kind of gives you chills in it. Tim Tebow's like, when you get told that you're going to do special things your whole life, something happens. You start to believe it. Mm-hmm. He's like, and you know, you feel like you can do special things. Yeah. And I was like, whoa.
Encouragement.
Like, I was like, it's cool to see that in a positive light.
Right.
Obviously, it can become destructive at a certain point, but like you can imagine the same thing as in a negative effect, right? If you constantly call your kid a shithead their whole life, like they're gonna play into that almost.
Yeah, and like they'll do it to please you because hey, that's who they want me to be apparently. So I would love for my parents to like me, and so maybe I should be what they want. But like literally yesterday, I heard Shaquille O'Neal say the exact same thing, that his father, who was a military drill sergeant, like a very, very conscientious, on time, all that shit. No, sir, yes, sir. And, you better do what he says kind of person. He told Shaq his whole life, big man. He called him big man, always. Big man, if you listen to me and do what I say, you will become the greatest who ever lived. And he never really specified in what, really. But he just always told him, like, if you listen to me, you're destined to become the greatest there ever was. And Shaquille, he literally said, like, it's not just that he was a drill sergeant and I didn't want to let the guy down because I was afraid of him, but he made me believe that because you're just told it constantly. And like that, it's not just like you're told it, like it's the way we say you're told it makes it sound so simple, but what that really means is someone's putting in the idea in your head that you're going to be the greatest. Like, it's like
the moist computer. Imagine programming into the computer every day of its life.
Right,
you're going to be the greatest. You're going to be the greatest. Right.
Then you're just watering that plant every day. It's not so simple as like, okay, what's really going on? You're creating this. You're changing this thing's future.
Which is why I say like you can do that as an adult too. And it sounds super cheesy, and it also sounds really difficult because it is.
Yeah.
It gets harder as you get older, obviously. But imagine you're 26 years old and you feel down in the dumps, and imagine every day telling yourself or looking yourself in the mirror while you're brushing your teeth, you're destined to be the greatest. You're destined. Like, it's stupid, but like you do it enough days in a row, you start to trick your brain.
Yeah.
And like you don't necessarily have to believe it, but if you do it enough days in a row, you start to almost self-identify with it.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what's been going on with me lately. We've talked about how like, we're feeling like we're in a rut kind of a little bit. And I'm glad we're honest about that because like I start, you see all these people on Instagram and shit who are jacked and rich and like doing everything they can all the time and like whatever, private jet, working from Dubai and like whatever. And you're like, man, I'm just like some asshole who goes to work every day and I don't really have much to show for it. But then like they all say these things like, and it could just be Tony Robbins kind of like bullshit motivational talk, but I don't know if it is anymore because all these people seem to say the same thing, which is if you just stop lying to yourself that well, what are you going to, I can't quit my job. I can't move. I can't enter an entirely new field and be successful. If you just start telling yourself that you can do those things, 5 years is going to go by and you're going to be rich and you're going to be successful and you're going to be your own boss. And all these people like Andy Elliott, even though he's got really tight pants and his nipples are always coming through his shirt, it's very funny. He's a very funny, intense person. He literally said to himself, I don't get tired. He said, I was tired. I was going through burnout, he called it. He's like, burnout's not real. It's just something somebody made up and wrote a book about for no reason to make some money. Realistically, you lost your drive, right? Like, but he goes, when I was tired from selling and trying to make all this money, every day, I'm not tired. I don't get tired. I don't get tired. And guess what?
It works.
I don't get tired anymore. Never. I'm never tired. Good catch. Mosquito?
Yeah.
So he goes, yeah, I goes, I don't get tired. So literally you can trick your brain. Like it's like anything else, like David Blaine. Like you can just trick, yeah, no, my heart races. It's not racing, it's slow.
Well,
whatever.
I've been working on this blog post for a while, and it's basically like.
But wait, real quick, before you get to your blog post, it makes me feel like, fuck, man. What if I do that?
Yeah.
What if I just start doing that? Will I actually achieve my like dreams? Like, is it that easy? You just start talking to yourself a certain way? Fuck.
I mean, Dave Chappelle obviously has a joke about that. It's about like The Secret, where it's just like,
The Secret.
It's like if you just believe. He's like, well, what about the fucking kids in Africa? You think if they just believe and tell themselves every day?
It's so true.
So yeah, I mean, obviously, you have to do stuff. But
of course,
the idea that I really gravitate towards is, obviously, just like you don't get self-confidence by, shouting affirmations in the mirror, right? That's not how you become successful. You get it by having a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are, right? So you have to do the things, but I think by saying those things to yourself every day in a positive light, every single day, reminding yourself, I'm not tired, I'm going to be successful every day, you start almost emitting an energy that's different. It's a different confidence. It's a different just force through life that you start opening yourself to seeing more opportunities that align with that.
Right.
So you're almost changing the lens and dusting off the glasses of how you used to look and giving yourself a new outlook that puts yourself in a position. So you still have to do the shit,
of course,
but it puts yourself.
Well, it's like taking steroids.
It gives you a few more steps forward towards that thing that you need to be doing versus where you were kind of on your heels. It puts you on your toes a little bit more. And I think that's the way I look at it. But yeah, I was saying I'm working on this blog post that's kind of like all the best lessons I learned from every self-help book I've read over the years. And I came down with kind of these 13 things. But really, I've been writing this for so long because there's a lot of shit to compile. But honestly, it comes down to like 2 things. And you get this through every person, that the 2 like truths of self-help, that if I needed to tell anyone how to get better or what to do, number 1 is you have to be able to keep the promises of that you say that you're going to do. You have to keep promises to yourself. If you say you're going to get up in the morning and go to the gym, you have to do it, because that's how you develop that self-confidence and that discipline. The second is the story you tell yourself. So are you going to be a victim, or are you going to be an actioner? Or are you going to be a doer? And the story you tell yourself, which is like, oh, I'm shy, and I always have that 2:00 where I just get tired, and I just don't get how these guys stay in such good shape all the time. If that's the story you tell yourself, great, you're always going to be like that.
Right.
If the story you tell yourself is, I'm disciplined, I work out every day, and I do everything I need to do, and I still get my business done, and I'm going to find a way to be successful, and I'm not going to get tired. If you tell yourself that enough, right, and you keep those promises to yourself, those 2 things combined,
you'll figure it out.
That's everything.
You'll be successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that now that hearing you talk about that, it's almost like the self-affirmation in the mirror kind of, it's like going to the gym. It's like lifting weights, but it's for your aura or something. Like it strengthens your presence. And like you still have to do the work. You still have to lift the weights, but the result is that you're stronger now. You look a little different. You look more confident. You look more, maybe intimidating if that's what you're looking for. And it's like running. Like I just picked up running again recently because I have a thing coming up and I'm training. I mean, dude, that first run after being on the couch, it's fucking brutal, bro. You can't believe you're going to have to run 13 of these bitches, right? Because it's only 1.5 miles and you're fucking dogging. But then all of a sudden you're running 3, then 4, then 6. Then you can run 8 miles. And like the training is the talking to yourself, because you're putting in this effort. Like even though you think you can't do this, you're doing it. You know what I mean? And like eventually your body conditions itself to make what you're trying to manifest a reality. And whether it's speech or whether it's running or lifting weights, your body will change as long as you keep doing it to yourself.
Yeah, and how good do you feel after that 13 miles, right? Because like
oh my God.
Or however long you set up.
I haven't run the 13 yet.
But like you feel like you're like, I kept that promise to myself.
Yeah, dude, and there's nothing better than when you had a shit day at work and you're like, you always say to yourself, I'll just run tomorrow. I'm really tired today. But then, like, that's what's great about a fucking Apple Watch is, like, it'll pop up like, oh, Allison ran a 5K. Fuck. Well, I can't run. Now I have to run.
Yeah.
Now I have to run. So that's another thing is, like, influence and the people you surround yourself with. We can go on forever. But
yeah, and it also, like, to go back to, like, the story you tell yourself, I've even noticed it goes back to the moist computer thing. Right, with the fire department. Sometimes I'm in situations, whether it's in training or in real life, where I'm nervous because I don't know what the fuck to do. I don't know what to expect, right? And I feel that nervousness in me where you start to almost like, not panic, but just like, oh God, like, what if I screw up? And you start telling yourself like, oh God, like, just don't screw up. That'll be really embarrassing. They're going to make fun of you for a while. And I can quickly just twist that into, oh, this is exciting. This is something new. I'm excited for this. I've never experienced this before. I'm going to learn a lot from this experience. Like, this will be an awesome story to tell. Yeah. And it's the same, like, biochemical emotion that I'm feeling in my heart, my head, and my chest, and my legs, my hands, the sweat, excitement and nervousness.
But you're aiming it differently.
Are the exact same feelings, like, biochemically, but I've just changed the story I'm telling myself. Instead of being a victim of nervousness and what if everything goes wrong, I change it to, how exciting is this and how cool is this going to be when I do it and the lessons I'm going to learn from it. Even if I screw up, it's going to be cool and exciting. Yeah. And I'm going to be amped to do it.
Yeah. And one more thing, because you mentioned quickly before we wrap it up, like you said, these guys are going to make fun of me for a while, right? I think a big part of it too is like, and guys talk about this too, like, sometimes people don't, it's not that, I feel like they word it incorrectly. It's not that they don't want to see you succeed or that they don't want to see you do well, or they're jealous of you or whatever. Maybe that's the case sometimes, but sometimes people just like to make fun of people because they made a mistake, right? Or that you're doing something that you don't know how to do yet. You're a fool. You're stumbling around like a moron, right? And whenever you feel that way or whenever you're doing something like that, I think it's important in life to know it's not, are they going to talk shit about me? It's when. Mm-hmm. And accepting that, who really gives a flying fuck if anyone says that makes fun of you when you're not around or like, talk shit about you behind your back? That actually has no literal effect on you at all. Right. And if you're not willing to be a fool and make mistakes and put yourself in situations where you're not comfortable, you're never going to learn anything. So like, you have to be able to accept that people are going to talk shit about you. It's like starting this show. There's definitely people who have seen it who have been like, who are these two idiots? Why do they think that they're worth listening to? Of course, but you just have to go, I don't, it's not if, it's when, and who cares? Yeah.
The real fool isn't the person who tried and failed. The real fool is the person who never tried.
But yeah, I mean, like, let's dumb it down to those two things again. It's
keep your promises to yourself and tell yourself a good story.
Yeah. Be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Bum. Let's wrap it up.
All right. Man. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to episode 11 of the Observe and Rapport Show. Make sure to click like and subscribe. Listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's all there. Yeah. YouTube. It's all there. Tell a friend, and they'll tell a friend. Mm-hmm. And, maybe you'll be on the show someday.
Share it. Come in for an interview, maybe.
Yeah.
We're trying to get into the interviews. We got to get some.
Put up pamphlets. Go to Staples. Print out like 500 copies of the Observe and Rapport Show with our faces on it. Staple it to telephone poles. Do whatever you got to do. Spread the word.
I mean, what else are you doing? Yeah. Nothing, right? So just go help a brother out.
Help a brother to help a brother. I gotta go to bed.
All right, let's go to bed. Good night.